So we talked about inequalities yesterday. Number one rule, isolate your inequalities. Make sure your inequality is your absolute value. Did I say inequality? Make sure your absolute value is isolated before you separate anything out. So get rid of this term, subtract 3, and then start. This is a great OR, so they're going to go out like this. Set it up this way. Then when you take the negative, rule is, when you take the negative of an inequality, flip the sign, your arrows have to go out. Solve it and set it up. And if it helps, put it on a number line. I had you put it on a number line. They're both open circles, so interval notation brings us from left to right, negative infinity to negative 28, 0 to infinity. Robert, do you have your homework?
Yeah.
Okay. Sarah, you weren't here yesterday. Yeah, I heard it was you have your homework ready?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Stop me if you have any questions, because these are important. This absolute value is already isolated. This is an and statement.
Do we have to do it?
No, you could do it the other way too. The only thing about when you separate it as an and statement, you have to bring it back together. You can't leave it like this unless you put an and in it. But since we're going with interval notation, just bring it back together. Because your ands then go like this. And as Amanda said, can you do it the other way? Absolutely. 1 minus 2x is less than 5. Whoops. And 1 minus 2x is greater than negative 5. Just bring it back to an and statement at the end. And again, interval notation. You okay with the interval notation?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. An and statement, an or statement, and an and statement. These have the equal signs on them this time. I try not to give you too many, but just enough of exposure to these. So bring your ors out, and then get rid of your denominator and multiply both terms by 2. Try not to cross multiply. Put it on a number line. We're good with this? You tell me where you have questions. And again, I tend to drop my hands, so if you want to zoom out the long way, that's fine. The only time you can't do it this way is if there's a variable on this side. Then you have to make sure you separate them. This is not the way we write our inequalities. I know Common Core lets you do this, but it still doesn't look right. You should always use the less than. Common Core lets you do it this way, but we tend to switch it. But you're going to do an interval notation anyway. Technically, you should read left to right, so it kind of is confusing that way. Questions? Feel free to ask questions, guys. Do that part over, go over it again. But isolating this, we divide it by 3. Get the absolute value by itself. Okay. These were just defining the interval. I wrote the equation just in case you did the equation part, but just defining your interval. I want you to get used to making interval notation. A hard bracket means the same thing as when it's a closed circle. The Regents does this as well, a hard bracket versus a soft bracket.
I don't think the actual value
You didn't have to do that on this one. You only had to do the interval. Did you make the equation on this one?
Yeah.
Okay, so perfect. So this is the formula for this. So when you do this, you find the midpoint. And midpoint is the number in between, is the average of the two. So your midpoint is a 0. Your difference is from the midpoint to an endpoint. Either way, it's going to be the same exact distance. And then all you have to do is say, if it's an and they're included, I need this symbol. So your x minus your midpoint, it's an and statement because it's included, and it's a hard bracket, and the difference goes right here. The difference is always positive. The difference is positive because it's like a distance. It's like the absolute value of that number. And then just clean this up a little bit. Okay. You kind of have to remember this. It works itself out with a plus or a minus based on where your midpoint is. If your midpoint was negative, then that's going to become a plus in the middle. If, in case of this one, we'll see it happen in this one. This guy, again, not as obvious. And if you wrote just an interval notation, find the midpoint, so add them together. Divided by 2, so your midpoint is 7. And the distance from here to here, 3. So fill in, this is an OR statement, and it's an open circle. So x minus your midpoint, which is 7, greater than the distance between them, 3. And that's it. You built your equation. This one will give you negative 4 over 2, so this gives you negative 2. Now when you put the negative 2 in to your equation, this is where it becomes the plus. So I have an and statement, and my distance between them, whichever one you find easier. This one is probably easier to see the distance. This one, go 2 to the 0, and then 3 more. Okay. Good with these? Okay. Kind of a cool way to come up with those equations. Okay, these, use your rule. Now, these are equalities. So if you want to do a reflexive statement, or you just want to keep it that way, you're fine. Set it equal to the negative of that. Set it equal to the positive of that. Remember, when you do an absolute value equality, you always have 2 choices. It could be a negative or it could be a positive. So that's where you're going with this. Positive, the negative. It's the negative of this whole thing. So you're going to have to distribute that negative sign. Collect all your terms on one side, factor, and again, make sure you check. Make sure you check them. This is always going to come out positive, so if this comes out to be a negative, it's not going to happen. Same thing with this guy. Bring out the positive, bring out the negative, and then check them both. Okay. Questions? Take a minute, look it over. Alright, so I gave you some intervals. Put it on the number line. It works much better if you take a look at it. Put it on the number line, see where these are going. It's going from negative 4, positive 4. Your midpoint is obvious. Your difference is obvious. Your midpoint is going to be here. Your distance is going to be 4. This is an and statement, soft brackets, so it's a less than. And once you build your statement, it has to make sure it actually works. These guys also, it's coming here at negative 2, coming here at positive 2. You can get one of those. It would be in Tuesday's folder. Tuesday's folder. The one marked Tuesday. got one. Okay. So find your midpoint. Your midpoint 0 again. Your distance from the midpoint to the endpoint is 2.
I don't know which sign that's used.
That's, if you put it on a number line, this is an or statement. An or is this, a great or. So misspell this. Call this a great or. An or statement gives you a greater. It goes like this. It makes ors on a boat. So then I know to use the greater than sign. An and statement in here is a less than. If I use the endpoints like this one, then I put the equal sign. If I don't use the endpoints, then I don't put the line underneath it. An and is a less than. And an or is a greater than. This is going to be an and. Build your number line. So it's going to go like this. And be solid in here. So that's my and statement. So right away I know that's going to be my symbol because it includes the endpoints. So find the midpoint, add them together, divide by 2, -1. So this might be a little bit more obvious this side. Say my difference is 4. And it works itself out because x minus a -1 will give you x plus 1. And your difference is 4. Your difference always has to be positive. You can't have an absolute value. Well, of your absolute, the whole concept of your absolute value is a distance thing. So distance is always positive. So make sure your difference is positive. Okay? These are different. You probably didn't do these last year. And again, I have an or statement. I'm going to 4, soft bracket, from 10. So this gives me an or statement. Find your midpoint in the middle, add them up, divide by 2. Take the distance from either side and set up your inequality. No equal sign there, just plain old greater. That's it. Now you're good. More like